So let's do that. Rip pets in Endwalker, pets being removed from Final Fantasy XIV.
My two primary jobs I really click with and enjoy the most above all else is Scholar and Summoner. So while this video might actually be a preemptive knee-jerk reaction, I'm making a video because I really do feel, and I'm avoiding any sensationalist terms because those really discredit an argument. I feel concerned, a little sad, and a little bit anxious about the future of my two favorite jobs going into Endwalker. In the interview done by Mr. Happy, likewise check out the full interview on his channel, absolutely. His fifth question was asked about edgy glamours. Yoshi-P's answer was, and I quote, "Currently Summoner as a job is reaching somewhat of a breaking point when it comes to the overall play mechanics, so we've halted work on edgy glamour for the time being in order to shift focus. There's a reason behind this, but we can't share the details with you at the moment. When the time comes, I'll be sure to properly share that information with everyone." So while we're not going to know the details until later...
Okay, that's crazy actually, because I think that actually announces this, right? He's right about this. That actually announces that they want to remove the mechanic itself. It comes to the overall play mechanics, yeah. I'm not too bad in this because I think the Egi behavior is just more like a thing that works, or it's just a standpoint for your skills, your abilities, and that could easily just be simple abilities that doesn't have to be connected to your pet AI, because the AI just sucks. Let's be honest. Right now, the AI just sucks. It's super annoying to command your pet to this or that position, and I would actually do like the idea to get this removed, kinda. So yeah, that's my 2 cents here. But
after FanFest, unless they really spend the time during FanFest to do a deeper dive than just a skill showcase.
Oh yeah, sorry, you're right.
This concerns me. This really concerns me. To me, this reads like Summoner's Edge Eyes are going to go, and from that, I also extend it to Scholar's Fairy getting the chop, which might surprise people from me saying that, but I really don't think it's too bold to say that, because the lines of reasoning behind the Scholar and the Summoner actually, from my experiences in game over many years, they follow the same issues. So if one is probably going to get the chop and be like stated to be like outgrowing its overall mechanics, the other one's probably in the same boat. But rather than wave my hands around and not actually explain what I mean by that, let me dive into it. So in Final Fantasy XIV, there are no persistent pet classes that maintain a pet of some sort out at any time.
Yes!
Yeah, that's right.
Yes!
While the Machinist can summon their big Omnic Butler and the Dark Knight can summon Frey, this is extremely different than Scholar or Summoner. For Machinist and Dark Knight, you honestly barely interact with the Summoner, where Scholar and Summoner are packed with skills that depend on the Fairy or Edge Eye that are out. This causes problems, and this is going to be more of a primer than an exhaustive explanation on each, which honestly could be an hour-long analysis on each, and
yeah,
you know me. It would be an hour-long analysis on each. My first point is to talk about numbers, because this seems to be the most shocking to people. So what about pet potency scaling? It is well known to us old-timers that the potency of the pet is not equivalent to the potency that you yourself as the Scholar do. Physic deals 200 potency of healing, Whispering Dawn is apparently 120 potency, so I expect Whispering Dawn to tick for 30% of Physic. Physic is about 22,000 in healing, Whispering Dawn is about 4.6k. But that isn't the case. We are not seeing this 30% of Physic, and this has been a cause of confusion for the Scholar and Summoner players alike. For example, let's take 22k and multiply it by 1.3, which is 30%. That gives you 6,600. So when we're comparing 6,600 to 4.6k, we are literally only getting 70% of what I would expect to be 120 potency. Now what about Faye Blessing as another example? Faye Blessing is rated at 350 potency, so it's critting at 20k. Critting at 20k. Physic crits were at 34k, around there. So again, this is like 70%-ish of what I'd be...
Yeah, and that's actually the biggest problem I have myself with the Scholar and the Summoner both, because I know that behind all of this, and we talked about that yesterday when it comes to the Glamour Dresser, these are so heavy convoluted systems and calculations that work behind the whole combat system itself and above that. Because the Summoner and Scholar are complex on their own, but they also introduce these pet mechanics, and I think removing those additional calculations that are running inside the class and in the background is definitely a good thing. In my opinion, it's a good thing because it doesn't feel like it's so important for me. I don't need to have my pet being command. I like the idea of Egi-Assaults that has been introduced in Shadowbringers, but it's not super necessary for me. I would actually not have any issue when my Eggies would be designed like Bahamut and Phoenix are, because they do feel like ordinary spells anyway, so why not just removing all the pet AI stuff? And yeah, I know what he's talking about, that this removes some class identity, and I know that's the case, but I would prefer gameplay fluidness and smoothness over this sort of, yeah, identity, because we can still summon Bahamut. I mean, what else do you want? We cannot command Bahamut. It's still weird with the behavior.
Yes!
Maybe not be used in that way or in that direction that it is now, and should definitely be changed and optimized, but I don't know. It's not a bad thing. I think we should go into that direction and make it kind of more like a dot. Not a dot. More than a dot, but somewhere in that direction. All you want is Luna version for Egi summons. Yes, that's awesome. That would be awesome. Okay, let's see what he's talking about anymore.
Expecting, and without a crit though, Faye Blessing is only at 12k healing. But mind you, here I'm doing exactly what I said I wouldn't. I'm going too deep. But the point is, when we get newer players to Scholar, that they generally aren't fully aware of this differential and are surprised that the fairy's output is honestly so much less than they expected. The pet potency is significantly lower than your own potency.
Okay, there's one thing I want to address here. I don't really think any new player will actually think about what the potency difference between the actual value of the output of a fairy is compared to what it's actually outputting. Cole, let's be honest, do you really think new players are getting this thought into their process of learning a job or making considerations which job they should play? And if that is actually the defining factor, I don't think so. I think it's the less of this convoluted stuff is being applied and being pushed onto each other, the better. To be honest, it's not something like, oh, they removed complexity of this job, so this job feels boring. It's more like they removed something that has to be improved because it's super, super annoying, put up onto the whole combat system that is also already stressful. And I feel like Scholar, even without commanding the fairy properly, is already super stressful and super annoying compared to what the white mage is offering and the smoothness of a white mage. So I don't think that newcomers will actually think about that a lot. Yeah, most new players won't even activate an ability on the pad bar menu until they reach max level. That's it. I think that's the case. So yeah, you're absolutely right about the high-end optimization and about what the pro gamers are thinking about and what they worry about, but it's not the case for newcomers. Really not.
And so the numbers can be a little deceptive. Now let's talk about pet delay. Pet actions honestly are delayed compared to your own. Compare Machinist's Gauss round, Ricochet spam between heat blasts, no delay.
Yes!
Compare trying to cast Constellation with Spring Dawn, Fey Illumination after Constellation. It's not as snappy. To say it's not as snappy actually would be a insulting understatement.
Yes.
The delay has absolutely caused pain. Now is ghosting of actions, and that doesn't make a lot of sense until people are like, oh, that's what you mean. So let's say I have Seraph out, and right before the cutoff, so Seraph only lasts 20 seconds, so she's just about to go away.
I hate that.
I execute the command on my character to cast Constellation.
It takes
but
so
now
long.
we have the pet delay, the other problem we just talked about. Seraph left already, though. The Constellation that I cast on my Scholar all of a sudden wasn't translated into any healing because Seraph already left. Likewise, we see this directly on Summoner, such as executing things like Enkindle, Command 1 and 2, and then immediately summon Bahamut. The actions that didn't already go off before Bahamut went, those
and that's exactly the thing I would change. I would just simply take away all these AI stuff, mechanics that can cause distraction, that can cause bugs and cause people to need to adjust their rotation and their movement positioning, whatever, to fit into the AI of their pet. For example, Bahamut is super, super finicky when it comes to all the worm wave procs that you get from using your cast in there. And that is something that should be changed. I don't think that they need something that follows onto your attacks with pet AI. On the other hand, maybe just make that big enkindle Bahamut, this big blast that you can use 2 times in a row, much more useful, and maybe that Bahamut is actually accumulating that. That would be, for example, take it that Bahamut is actually accumulating this powerful Akmorn blast instead of spamming worm rays after each of your useless casts that you do inside of this. That would be awesome. That would actually be more Final Fantasy-like than everything else. That you summon Bahamut and he actually needs to take maybe do this 2 times in a row. But he needs around 6 to 8 seconds to accumulate that powerful attack. That would be awesome. I think that would change everything, and people would actually like the summoner more because of these big numbers being produced by Bahamut, being accumulated by this awesome stuff. And when you look back at Final Fantasy, when you summon somebody, some Aeon, some Primal, whatever, they did the most damage. Eden in Final Fantasy VIII, most damage spell. Bahamut in 10 was, until you learned other stuff, the biggest attack, the biggest wave of attack. And that is just the beginning. And that actually fits much more to the background story, the stuff that works and happens in 14 itself. Summoning Bahamut, guys, it literally just destroyed Eorzea if there hasn't been our good Louis Suarez that prevented that. So let's be honest, that would be the way to change it. And that would be the best way to counteract all the stupid pet AI, just summoning Bahamut and producing this awesome wave of blasts.
That you cast on your summoner are literally gone. I want to talk about a variety of pets. And while maybe some people don't consider this a problem, I actually am somewhat saddened still. Okay, I'm really
Boogie,
sad
you're right.
still.
Something like
Eos
the Shadow
and
for
Selene
Dark
used
Knight.
to be 2 very different fairies with 2 very different skill sets. Sure, at the end of the day, you can all have them use Embrace, but their other actions were different in the past. Selene basically got the axe, and Eos was left as the only option. Similar for that, Summoner has only 2 pet options outside of incredibly fringe situations where, yes, Titan Shield can be useful. I make that argument and I stand by that.
I never did
even top tier
that,
summoners often don't switch and instead question why the healers didn't do their job properly. And honestly, that's a fair question to ask. If no one messed up a mechanic and you did die to something that you shouldn't die to, where's the healing? So usually it is flat out in any fight like a trial or a raid, Ifrit is out for anything single target. Garuda, anything AoE.
Absolutely.
So from a playstyle perspective, is having another pet really all that special anymore? Not really. Right now, there is not truly a choice or variety. And likewise, there are more problems, but I'm not going to even try to go into the same depth because I want to keep this video condensed. Time to set up and recover from death is requiring respawning a pet at the very least. It is better now than it was in the past with like the huge cast times, but back then, dying back in the day was so agonizing, or dissipation used to be such a pain. Other things like losing range on a pet, or losing control on a pet, which is still an issue for me because I miss when I can actually direct with macros my fairy to heal a particular target. Like I never needed to use like Aether Pact to direct my fairy to heal the tank. Instead, now we have Seraph hitting like random DPS that took chip damage with Constellation. I'm like, why? I want this on the tank, but that was definitely another problem. I do feel that. The next thing is loss of parallel control on pets. You used to be able to cast something like Resurrection, which has a stupidly long cast, as everyone knows, and issue commands to the pet without problem. That was removed this expansion, and even at the tail end of the expansion, this is still one of my biggest gripes with Scholar right now, and how it changed. So I just rattled off like 10 very real problems with pets without even diving that deep. Like I didn't think very hard on getting those problems out. So is it really any wonder that the development team wants to remove them? And
no,
I mean,
no
if
way.
I'm being honest, as much as it pains me to say, no,
It's necessary.
it doesn't surprise me. I can see exactly why Yoshi-P put it as currently Summoner as a job, and Scholar probably is in there, is reaching somewhat of a breaking point when it comes to overall play mechanics.
Yeah.
As much as it genuinely pains me, I can see exactly what is meant by this, which I take utterly zero joy in saying, because I love pet classes. Now here's where we have the turnaround, which will shock people. We see Scholar and Summoner without pets in the game today. And people might not be happy with what I have to say. Current forms of PvP for Scholar has it where they can't summon Seraph or any fairy at all. You don't.
Yeah, okay, there's something I have to go into, because the PvP system is definitely a very, very empty husk of what our rotations in Shadowbringers or in endgame PvE content is. So I think it's not a good example how to deal with that, because for me, PvP job system doesn't work properly. It doesn't provide at any point the fun that you have from executing rotations in PvE situations. So yeah, maybe that's not a good prime example, but he's right about that. We don't need pets. They can remove that. They can find another way to give the summoner identity here. And like I said, this accumulating blast for Bahamut would be super, super awesome. I would love that, and I would even main the summoner with more heart than ever before, and that would be just mind-blowing.
Don't have a fairy. There is no fairy in the current PvP Scholar kit at all. Yeah. Instead, it's focused on barriers and skills to temporarily augment their healing output, like enhance it, basically. Pretty much, that's it. But I'm going to say that for me, personally, it did kill a lot of the entire reason I play Scholar, and that's why me doing Scholar in PvP isn't a thing you've seen.
Yeah, okay, I guess that. And non-existence, you're right. I think the AI for the Chocobo works better, but just because the Chocobo, you can't do anything. You just click, do this, heal, or do that. It doesn't work properly still. I don't know. I would just go the route and remove the stuff.
Yes!
Oh yeah. Or change that completely, that you're actually going into a summoner stance and don't do stuff by yourself. You just command your pet in that spot and don't do anything else. So you don't do the OGCDs, you don't do, or just OGCs that you get through this stance, through this summoning stance, but you don't do anything your summoner is doing at that moment. Like, for example, like Yuna in Final Fantasy X, she's just going into the background and she just lets her summons fight each other or fight the enemy. So that's what would provide the class identity to its fullest, and I think is another option how you can do that. But I would love to see that. I like the idea of Bahamut stance and Phoenix stance, but just without these auto attack problems, AI problems when that interacts with your movement in a very bad way and stuff. That's something I don't want to see anymore, and I hope they improve that.
This channel yet, is it? Like, honestly, I need that fairy to live my fantasy. It's a huge part of the kit. Now I look at the summoner, and the summoner plays without any sort of pet skills, no enkindle in PvP, no edgy commands. It's all their own kit, and then they pop into Dreadworm Trance without even Bahamut in the background, and then they move into Phoenix Trance, and there isn't even a Phoenix bird. Instead, just augmented summoner skills, which I can see why there's no Bahamut and Phoenix, because they are so large, and that might be distracting in PvP, but at the same point of time, that kind of destroys the fantasy. Like, but that's PvP. When you see that response from Yoshi-P, though, that might be exactly what we're seeing in Endwalker. And this is actually, factually, a form of Scholar and Summoner we have right now, as I'm making this video right now, in-game, playable today. A Scholar with no fairy and a Summoner with no pets at all. And does it resolve the problems of ghosting skills, pet scaling, and the rest mentioned before? Sadly, from a design perspective, it absolutely does. I'm just going to cut off this video pretty early, but honestly, this has left me, and I'm trying to avoid any sensational words because I feel that they debunk any credibility of an argument, but I'm anxious and saddened right now because, and it's not me mincing words, because I've fallen in love with the Scholar and Summoner since like 2013. They have been my thing. I guess we're just going to have to see how this pans out. I'm honestly a little scared for my main and Endwalker, honestly, just from this one answer, but yeah.
Don't be anxious, Cole. You can do that. I have true faith in Square that they will come up with good ideas because they really listen to the feedback we provide, and yeah, hopefully your video will reach that stage as well. So yeah, my concluding words here, I think the Summoner is in a good state right now. That can have some improvement onto certain things. And when it comes to the Scholar, I think there could be a whole revamp or overhaul of the whole job, because I think it just doesn't fit. There's so many ideas or basic mechanics that have are seemingly opened up, not finished. They just seem to be scratched onto a certain surface and then not delved into that deeper. And there's so many surfaces that have been scratched on, and I don't like that. Just go one path completely and not this one, this one, this one, this one. That's like leveling jobs and you never finish one job, you will never reach endgame. And that's somehow, it doesn't feel right. For me personally, I don't like the Scholar. I think I'm not the only person. I'm sharing this idea and opinion with many other players as well. I don't know. Hopefully we will see good changes, and I would love to see a blasting Bahamut that is casting and constructing and creating that whole blast with reloading himself for 6 or 7 seconds. That would be awesome. I would just love that. So yeah, thank you, Cole, for having us unintentionally on this video. Thank you guys for recommending that video. That's awesome. That really blew up some ideas that maybe I can produce into another video and talk about the summoner changes I wish for. And yeah, she never is writing. She knows I need to go now. It's time. I have 10 minutes left to get her. So yeah, thank you, Cole. Subscribe to Cole on YouTube and leave him a like, leave him a follow.